All right, so I've got ourselves a spreadsheet. I'm going to do what I did before and collect out information, data from the descriptions for each species. So copy Sagittaria brevirostra, paste, copy the name over. All right, paste, maybe, sure, why not? Gonna get some big fonts here. All right, Sagittaria brevirostra, Sagittaria cristata. Dun, dun, dun. So sometimes people get good at telling species apart by studying them over a long time. Obviously, that's maybe the best way to get yourself most familiar with the species you're learning here. If you want to just cut right to the chase and take advantage of other people's data, this is another way to do it. So I'm just pasting over the descriptions for all of our 7 species. Graminia was one of ours. I want to show you as part of this video series that if you know what you're doing, you could do this whole project in a couple hours, but don't let that be advice to do this in a couple hours. You're going to take longer to do it, and yours, I hopefully, will look a little better than my final product. I just want to show you how to go about doing it. All right, Folio, Montevidensis, Montevidensis. And rigid, I think that was the whole thing. 7 species, Sagittaria rigida. So maybe I'll leave the big fonts on there just to let everybody see this on the video. All right, so I'm going to go drag the names over. So if you remember, this is similar to what we started with when we did the dichotomous key project, getting electronic data and making them work for us. So we can use this data split text to columns feature. And if you choose the separator as a custom separator, I think I said custom, so I want a period space, I think is how we did it before. So even the punctuation on here should be pretty cleanly defined. Period space is a nice pattern that shouldn't exist in like a decimal. Here we have in the range 0.8 for a measurement. So just a period would split that up, but the period space splits it up nicely into components. I can see each of the sentences starts. It starts herbs, it starts leaves, it starts inflorescences, flowers, and so on. If I was a little bit more bold, it looks like even the semicolons are pretty standardized on here. One of the problems with the splitting text to columns is you sort of get to do it once. And then if I try to split this one by semicolons, it's going to overwrite the columns next to it. So I think I'm just going to settle for having things be a little bit different than their neighbors. Or sorry, I'm going to settle for things being a little bit long in the descriptions. All right, so I made that one wide. I'm going to make these other ones a little bit wider. So just highlight everybody and pull them out. And then also what you can do is to go to the format, text wrapping, and wrap the text. That makes sure you can see everything. Some of these will be a little bit longer than others. I'm going to do the freeze a row option. and that'll let me maybe put some headers in here. I'm going to sort by species name, and that's going to split things up a little bit and maybe make this a little tinier, not that tiny. I can also freeze this. If I go to the view menu, freeze one column, that'll make sure that the names stay in place even when I scroll off to the side. Okay, so we did this before. You might, as you're getting more familiar with the group you're working on, I guess you could take a little more time to try and subdivide this. I'm going to try splitting the semicolons and see what that gets me. Ooh, isn't that nice? So I made some extra empty columns beforehand to make sure I wouldn't run into anything, and I safely avoided that. And that actually turned out really nicely. So I'm going to say offhand, this looks like a group that people were careful about their punctuation. And so the punctuation is now splitting very equivalent lines of text, which is really ideal. So maybe I'll do that. I'm getting a little bolder. I'm going to try this with a few more. I'm going to give myself a whole lot of spare columns just in case. And I'm going to try that again. So I'm making the extra columns because when I split this to text, or split the text to columns, it's going to fill in whatever's there regardless of whether it has text. So I just want to make sure at the end of my filling, there's still empty space. And sure enough, that's good. Things are a little bit not always equivalent here. So we might have to do some cleaning up on that. But I kind of like where we're going with this. So why don't I keep going? It'll be a little messy for starters, but we'll catch up. Insert 10 left. Data, split text to columns, semicolon. Now we got flowers and then fruits. Data, split text to columns by semicolon. I guess you could do semicolons first and then periods, but that might be easier. I think the periods are less abundant. So this last little feature here, 2n is 22. That's a chromosome count, and that's certainly not something you would grab a microscope in the field and be able to do. This one species, Sagittaria brevirostra, has a little end point about talking about missing data, whether faces are tuberculate or not. If data, I think this is looks like an editorial note, so I'm just going to leave that out because I don't think it had any information that's useful for us. Okay, so splitting by semicolons has given us some of these features that are like one line each, which is handy. Okay, so we did this before as an exercise in lab. You can go down each column and see if you've got something useful. So rhizomes, absent. No, please don't. Absent. Here's an absent. This is going to be present. So this is describing rhizomes. If they're being described, they should be present. And let's see, we got present, absent. So handy, also maybe not the first thing you would look at on this plant. So I don't know if we'll be able to find an image to show this. So it's good information to have if you're trying to identify these, but to know if you've got that on a plant, you'd have to take it apart to see that. Stolons, maybe the same thing. All right, I'm going to see if I'm going to give this a shot. Google is trying to do things for me here. So it says it's going to find present or absent in that description. It actually did okay on that. So one of these lacking stolons. And then here we have corms also. We could do another one for corms. So present. No, you don't want to fill this in for me? All right. All right, so I don't know if these have been super useful yet. Let's see if we get anything useful here. All right, so as far as like curating our data list here, this is apparently a little trickier description. So let's see if we can make everything equivalent here. So petiole, bump, bump, bump. This starts off describing petioles here. Floating, immersed. So floating leaves, submersed leaves, immersed leaves would be the ones out of the water. So let's see if we can maybe split this up and make it make sense for us here. So submersed leaves, floating leaves, and immersed leaves. So not every species is going to have every combination here. This one says immersed. So I'm going to cut that out and paste it in there. I thought I was going to. Spreadsheets can be a little tricky about copying just the right thing. So I'm going to trim this one down. Just tell me that it is immersed. So this tells me the kinds of leaves that can be found, submersed and immersed. Immersed, floating, submersed. All right, so submersed, submersed, submersed. This one says only immersed. So we're gonna have to put it over there for now. Submersed, submersed, immersed, immersed, submersed, submersed, immersed. Okay, submersed leaves. So these other ones that don't have any submersed leaves, they would be absent for submersed leaves. And everything else has at least the possibility of submersed leaves. Here's another immersed, immersed, immersed. Floating, only one of these mentions floating leaves, Sagittaria cuneata. So I guess this is as a normal matter of course, there are not floating leaves in those plants. Good to know. All right, so probably the most of the description covers the immersed leaves, the ones that are emergent out of the water. And I see we have petiole described. And immersed leaf blade. We'll see how this goes. All right, phyloidal linear. I'm going to say, all right, so I'm going to do this again where I'm going to copy the text and phylloidal. So phylloidal is like a, I don't know, kind of looks like a flattened stem almost. Could look up a description of that if you want. Phylloidal, a flattened leaf stalk that functions as a leaf, as in an acacia. So that's, I don't know if that's the most useful description here. So it's basically telling us that the leaf looks like a stem that's been flattened that looks like a leaf. So it's really a leaf. I don't know why you would say it looks like a stem that looks like a leaf, but sure. sometimes these terms just call something to mind, right? Petiole recurred. All right, so here's petiole, then blade. So petiole described there, blade described here. Petiole triangular. Okay, blade, copy blade. And blade. All right. Hopefully this is useful for somebody. You know, it's probably a little tedious if you're watching every minute of this. So offhand, I would say maybe blade shape is going to be one of the more useful features we have to work with. All right, so one left. Insert one left. So petiole length. These measurements that they're basically just a maximum. So up to 39 centimeters, not as helpful because there's not a minimum on there. This one that's described as sessile. Sessile, of course, is no petiole. So that would be pretty useful for that species anyway. 3.5 to 51 centimeters, 6.5 to 17 centimeters, 6.5 to 51 centimeters, 21 to 55 centimeters, 34 to 50 centimeters. So not coming out as terribly useful here. Let's see, sagittate, linear to lanceolate. So we'll do shape of the leaf, linear to sagittate, linear to linear oblanceolate, sagittate, estate to sagittate, linear to elliptic, rarely, estate to sagittate. We've got leaf sizes. Looks like these might be useful, maybe not. Looks like a lot of overlap again. Big ranges, a big range of leaf size, 0.6 to 22 centimeters. Maybe not terribly useful. So, you know, as a project, I'm hoping you can spend more time getting familiar with the features on your species. I don't know how much I can become an expert on Sagittaria right now, so you probably don't want to be part of that anyway. So we've got our table of features. Now it might be a little more helpful if we refer back to the key. So key to genera. Just do one of these. See what happens if I paste their key in. Good things or bad things? Hey, mostly good things. Oh, look at that. All right, so I've been doing a little bit of this. I'm sure I'm more comfortable with it than most people. Stretch things out a little bit better. So one thing you can do, I'm going to do the format text with Strikethrough. So I've got a keyboard shortcut. I'll do that. Could just go through and eliminate the species that are not found in the state. That might be a way to think about your species when you're doing the taxonomic key. Soetiformis, fasciculata, secundifolia, lancifolia, teres, demersa, curtiana, filiformis, subulata, guyanensis, platyphilus, sanfortii, montevidensis. Okay. Maybe you have the patience to work through this. Maybe you just want to skip around. All right, so I did some of this before. I kind of hinted at it. We could actually condense down the key and make it work for just the Wisconsin species. So I noticed that 23 led only to Sagittaria cuneata for ours. I can do the same thing. So this key couplet 22 doesn't have more than one Wisconsin species, so I can delete couplet 22. And I can condense this whole thing down. Here's another one, 21 consists of only one species, so I can take out 21. I think this is going to work. You also have in your Wisconsin Flora book a key that goes directly to Wisconsin species. While you're trying to make sense of the species you're faced with, it might be helpful to consult a couple sources. 18. All right, so all of 16 is a bust, which means that whatever leads to 15 will go right to this species. And 15 and 16 can get scrapped. 14 is only one species. Lancifolia, 12. 12 goes to 13. 13 goes to two species. So let's skip 12 and go right to 13. All right, so 10 goes right to 11. So instead of 10, we'll go to 11. Skip 10. 8 is a bust. 7 is a bust. 6 is a bust. 8, 7, 6, 5 is a bust. Delete these. Chance that was a bunch of related species. So 5 went nowhere. 4 goes nowhere. So we actually removed a whole bunch of this dichotomous keys that didn't go anywhere. You might have to watch this on the replay to have it make sense for you. All right, so we don't have all the numbers represented, but I'm going to leave it that way. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 species. Was that right? We got an extra one. Who's our extra? Okay, gotcha. So we have Sagittaria cuneata in here twice. Sometimes that happens in a key. I'll probably just leave that there. Make a mental note of it. So now maybe we can use this a little bit more effectively. So this is the key from Flora North America. Sagittaria FNA key trimmed. Okay, so we did that for Sagittaria brevirostra. This one I'm having a hard time getting getting a nice illustration for, even like picturing it in my head. So let's see if we can make this make sense for us. I don't even know which image it is right now. So let's look at the leaf shape description. So immersed leaf blades. So brevirostra has sagittate blades. So that'll be one of these. I also know from my Latin background that breve rostra means that it has a short beak. That's what we're looking for, connate distinct. The bracts I would expect are these leaves along the stem. So connate distinct or connate much less than 1/4 of their total length. That sure looks like a long bract. And that was contrasted with in our key breve rostra with 23 latifolia or cuneata. And I think cuneata is this linear blade. Yeah. Process of elimination. There must be another way to find out which species we're looking at here. All right, let's see if we can eliminate one of these as a possibility. So Sagittaria rigida, what's so special about you, Sagittaria rigida? Back to the key, Sagittaria rigida. Pistillate flowers, sessile, or pistillate flowers, obviously pedicellate. Wait, who is sessile? Sagittaria rigida, pistillate flowers, sessile. Oh, that's so tiny. Okay, so those are pistillate flowers. I still have some doubts. Pistillate flowers, definite pedicel. This illustration over here, also pedicel. So maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I shouldn't dive into this as quickly as I am. Let's go back maybe to images. Sagittaria brevirosa. Okay. Here's a website I wasn't familiar with, but let's check it out. Sagittaria brevirostra. So I'm kind of choosy about images. This one looks a little bit fuzzy. You can always flop around. This one has really low resolution, 162 by 200 pixels. If you get something in the hundreds or even up to 1,000 pixels, that's a nicer image. All right, so Sagittaria brevirostra. This one's a good resource. So I guess maybe over time you can kind of get a better feel for which are more reputable resources, but this is the southwestbiodiversity.org, probably pretty effective website. So Sagittaria brevirostra, I'm gonna copy that one. That looks like a pretty good source. Paste it in there. So probably end up with a final presentation having more than one page for each species. So we got our brevirostra. Let's keep going on here. This looks like a good source of images. So, oh, I love it. Cool. Really young flower stalk. Copy image. So ideally, we're going to find some images that highlight the differences between species. So this bracts, distinct bracts, maybe kind of shown here. I guess those are kind of shown pretty well there. Click on image to enlarge. Oh, so beautiful. This is the best part, right? Just finding good images. So you can see the different sexuality of the flowers. These are what the pistillate flowers, the female flowers, look like. Just sort of a big clump of achenes, tend to form pretty early. And then these are the pollen-producing male flowers, along with a flower visitor. All right. Maybe just to illustrate what I might do finally, I'm going to do a duplicate slide. That'll let me keep the headers on here. And I'll delete the images for one, and I'll delete them, I don't know, maybe the illustration maps from the other one. And then you can line these up. I find they're a lot more attractive if you can line them up. There's a lot of, you notice the little guides are coming in as I line this up. So I get a red line if it lines up with like a text box or the edge of an image. And if you get these all like snug and lined up, you see the blue comes in there as I get them at the same height. Then I get an appearance that's a lot more uniform. You can also highlight, if you highlight several, so shift and click will highlight several of these, and then you can drag them all together. I like to keep the aspect ratio the same, so that's not so good. But if you drag the corner while holding shift, it'll make sure that they all increase at the same ratio. So you can get a nice crisp image presentation there. Look at all the skills we're picking up today. All right, so I'll start. We got a couple pages for this species. Right now we're not highlighting necessarily the differences, but we might not be able to. You might end up just telling people what the differences are. So this video is going a little long. I'm going to stop it and shift over to another one that looks at the phylogenetics, and then it might be about done.